back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti. This is my Anomalous Study Hall. And this week I read a new book by Dr. Julia Mossbridge. It's called Have a Nice Disclosure. So this is the book. It was a quick read. It's written in a really interesting and different way. And I actually kind of went back and forth between the book and the audiobook so that I could hear her writing in her own voice, because she reads the audiobook, and because of the structure and the style, it actually helped me a lot to hear her read it. Because the communication style is so different in this book, it's easy for the mind to get frustrated, confused, to project a voice onto it, to start imagining things about the person based on the way it's written. And while that's interesting to observe, it kind of gets in the way of just hearing what she has to say. So actually listening to the audiobook helped me to tap in to what it is that she's trying to transmit here. I'm going to read you just a little bit about her from the back cover of the book, and then I'll tell you about what I read in this book. So, Julia Mossbridge, PhD. Dr. Mossbridge is an American cognitive neuroscientist, author and educator who researches exceptional human performance, including psi effects, notably precognition. She is the Human Potential Research Lead for the telepathy tapes, a senior distinguished fellow in human potential at the Center for Future of AI, Mind and Society at Florida Atlantic University, member of the Loomis Innovation Council at the Stimson Center, affiliate professor in the Department of Biophysics and Physics at University of San Diego, founder of Mossbridge Institute, and co-founder of the 501c3 nonprofit TILT, T-I-L-T, the Institute for Love and Time. So Julia came onto the radar for me through the Psi Games and the telepathy tapes. And another thing that happened recently was she came out about her own experience in a program that came before the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented program, and that was called SOAR, S-O-A-R. This book, Have a Nice Disclosure, even though there's kind of a little alien on the front, which is kind of silly, is not really about UFO or alien disclosure. It's more about uncovering or disclosing to ourselves an internal truth that is innate and accessible to us. And so I would categorize this book as someone's transmission of information that they are downloading into their consciousness from either other individuated units of consciousness along the lines of NHI of some kind, or straight from the larger consciousness system itself. It's also a reflection on her own process of disclosure, of awakening, of understanding, and it goes into her history with GATE and SOAR. And so the beginning of it is a little more poetic, a little more lyrical. It kind of takes you on a little journey. And I think what she's trying to do here, I mean, it does sound like a channeled book because she refers to the chapter titles being given to her a couple of times. So it sounds like she is a little bit separating herself from the work in the way that channelers do. And the way she talks about it reminds me of how channelers talk about their work, but it's not really stated explicitly. And I think the concept of channeling is interesting, but it really could be us just channeling ourselves or channeling the larger consciousness system. In any case, if we are creating something, we're participating in it. So you can pretty much assume that it's going to be flavored with the experience of the individual who's bringing that information forward. And what is the information that she's bringing forward in this book? It's kind of like a roadmap to this awakening process or this disclosure process. She talks about the disclosure blues, for example. She talks about this ebb and flow of information coming in, us being able to process only a certain amount of it, maybe leaving it for a while and then coming back to it. She expresses some frustration around not being able to fully uncover certain memories, even though she has a very strong memory in other areas. And she speculates that this may have something to do with whatever testing was done on her as a child. She also expresses her desire for science around Psi to move away from this secretive testing on unwitting citizens or marginalized people and bring it out into the light where, if we're going to do experiments around this stuff, people are giving consent and it's also beneficial to them. And that's something that she's really trying to do in her work. And another thing I know just from listening to her in interviews is that she's really curious about the force of love and the power of love as it relates to Psi phenomena. Something we know from a lot of the people who have been through some kind of training or testing or are studying Psi phenomena, we've learned that stress inoculation is often a tactic used to awaken the innate Psi abilities. And this makes sense from an evolutionary perspective because it is the stressors in reality that prompt us to grow. So of course, certain stressors placed upon a human consciousness can also trigger and initiate an evolution of that consciousness. And I think when that happens naturally, it's perfectly fine and can be embraced as a blessing, even though it feels extremely painful when it's happening. But for people to take it upon themselves to put stress on others in order to secretly find out what the effects are, obviously that's unethical, and that's what Julia is saying in her work. She wants people to stop doing that, bring things into the light, but also she's positing that there is another equally powerful way to awaken Psi, and that is love. And I think she's onto something here. I know for myself that when I was in a heightened state of love, I was able to tap into Psi more easily. I also know that when I was in a heightened state of stress, anxiety, and fear, that also opened me up in other ways. So it does seem to be this kind of double-edged sword or two sides of the same coin here. But it's important that we understand both and don't just keep going down this road that was started by the military, who has very specific intentions around developing Psi. And not just the military, but, other branches of the government, intelligence agencies, and secret programs in general. So a lot of people are out here practicing Psi abilities these days. And one thing that we're learning from them is that it does require a softening of the limiting belief structures that hold us in a certain reality paradigm. And this used to really rub me the wrong way because I just want things to be real in consensus reality. However, it does seem that consciousness is taking some of us through a process, kind of like a process of initiation that requires a playful participation where we actually do put things to the test in terms of our own limiting beliefs and also creating beliefs that allow for more to occur in our experiences. And all of this makes total sense within the context of a theory like Tom Campbell's theory of everything, which I've been following for over 15 years now. So I feel like it's important that we really put that theory to the test. And so this is why I'm playing around with Psi. And there have been times in my life where I felt like this is too weird, it's too woo-woo, it's unproductive, it's pulling me off my path. But right now I'm really established in and grounded in the material reality, performing at a high level at my job, taking care of my pets, embracing my community, developing my relationships with people that matter to me. And so I can also dip into some of these practices without feeling like I'm losing the plot, you know what I mean? Because in life, we do have to focus on multiple things at the same time. And right now, I'm going to play a little more with softening those limiting beliefs that might be blocking me from having certain experiences. One of the things that I'm learning from those who are playing around with Psi is that it takes practice and repetition. Today, I went back to my remote viewing practice, which I've been neglecting for a couple weeks because I'm preparing for a big relocation. So I've been packing and cleaning and doing a bunch of chores in preparation for that. But when I went back to my practice today, it took me about 4 sessions to really warm up, and then I got a perfect hit. There were just so many misses, 3 misses before that. But what I'm learning is that for me personally, it takes me a couple sessions to really get into that sweet spot. And I'm not sure if I keep going after that, if it would get better or worse, because I haven't had a lot of time to do that lately. But that is something I've learned for myself. And all of the people practicing Psi skills are saying it's really good to learn your own way. Take inspiration from other people, but don't be afraid of ideas coming to you and just running with it, doing it your own way, trying something different. Everyone has their own different methods, and that's where people are finding the most success, not in trying to replicate what someone else is doing. I've been playing around with the PK. I still feel like I'm at the level where I'm just moving things with air or static electricity, which is perfectly fine because all the instructors say that that's where you have to start. And you can even play a little game of mirroring where if the Psi wheel is moving a little bit on its own, you just follow it with your hand until you sort of link in, and then you start to try to harness that energy and move it with your will. So I'm still playing around with that. I'm still testing out the mind sight by putting on the blindfold, walking around, putting my face towards the sun, waving my hands in front of the blindfold, and just kind of visualizing my own hand with my mind's eye, which is pretty easy to do. It's not like a crystal clear image, but I can sort of see the outline of it. Like if you did this with your eyes closed, you can kind of see where the hand is moving, and you can imagine the shape and size of it because it's part of you. So it's something you're already connected to. I'm working on my limiting beliefs around this practice by repeating to myself that I already render images with my eyes closed when I dream. So I already have the ability to see without eyes. My body is taking in information all the time that my consciousness is rendering for me. It's not just a mechanism of the eyes and the mind, it's actually the consciousness, and that's what we're tapping into with things like seeing without eyes. But I still have a lot of limiting beliefs too. It's so easy for me to look at people playing and say oh, they're just picking up the colors because there's a crack in their mask and that's not that impressive. It's a very fine line. So again, I just want to keep playing with these things and seeing where it leads. I'm definitely going to be following the research of Dr. Julia Mossbridge, and I believe she'll be speaking and participating in the upcoming Psi Games as either a board member or a panelist. I'll have to look into that and see. And I do recommend this book. It's interesting as a quick read. I would say I liked the audiobook better than the hard copy, so maybe check that out. And I'll be back next week from a new location with more, hopefully on the Niara Terela Isley book, Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light. All right, I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.